What it do, being crew? It's your boy Savon Thomas back with another episode of Coffee and Comments, and today we got a good one. We're reviewing the movie Margin Call.
There are $8 trillion of paper around the world relying on that equation.
Well, we were wrong.
No, you mean you were wrong.
Sir, if those assets decrease by just 25%, that loss would be greater than the current market capitalization of this entire company.
How long would it take to clear that from our books?
You cannot be doing what you're thinking of doing.
Sell it all today.
You're selling something that you know has no value.
So that we may survive.
Saw this on Netflix, chose to give it a watch. It came up underneath thrillers for some reason, thriller category. And I would not call this a thriller at all, right? And so this movie is about, really it's a finance movie. Like, it's about them finding out some things within the housing bubble and the beginnings of 2008 stock market crash. But this movie talks about it from the perspective of a company figuring out that this is going to happen and then saying, what are we going to do about it? Right, and it's very interesting to see because you have these finance guys who are making a ton of money, right? They're making a crap ton of money in the finance industry, selling off these different products, these different mortgages and things like that. And to get into it a little bit, the movie kind of walks through a guy named Eric Dale who gets fired. Which that's not like a big thing. Like, it's not like, oh man, he gets fired. No, he gets fired. It's not really big. That happens in the first two minutes of the movie. And he gives this drive to one of his, I won't call them underlings, but people that work for him, and says, hey, check this out. And so that giving them the drive to the end of the movie is basically them just having a bunch of board meetings and talking more and more about it. And so this movie can be dry if you're not into like finances or government or movies about the government or different things like that. Like, it can be dry. Like, there's not a bunch of action that happens. It's just mostly just like conversations and thoughts of what happened in these big businesses that did survive, like a Merrill Lynch, like a Goldman Sachs, all these different big businesses that had to deal with the follow of it, and this company saying, you know what, I'm gonna get ahead of it and just rip the market off. And so it was interesting to see the internal conflict from the different heads of the companies and what they end up choosing to do with these different mortgages and loans that they have access to. And it's just interesting to see like kind of the dichotomy in storyline of like, what actually, no, I'm saying it's not what actually happens, but potentially what happening at these different big businesses. I don't know. I just kind of like some of that stuff. Like, again, it's a dry movie if you don't like finance or government type deal. But for me, that just likes to understand stuff like that, like decision making and how people think and what actually happens internally at some of these companies. It was very interesting to see, right? The acting in this movie was, it wasn't, I won't say phenomenal, but it was easy to, let me bring it back. Every actor did a great job. And there's some big names in this movie. You have Kevin Spacey, which F that guy, touching little boys, worst guy out there. But he is the main character in this movie. I mean, you can't, regardless of him being in the movie or not, it's still a good movie. You have Jeremy Irons, which I didn't realize he played Scar in my favorite Disney movie ever, Lion King. And it was so funny because I was listening to Jeremy Irons talk, and he plays the CEO of the company, big wig. He basically is the villain in the movie because he makes some kind of evil decisions and manipulates certain things to happen. But it was just interesting because I'm like listening to him talk, and I'm like, is that Scar? And then I look it up, and I'm like, damn, that is Scar. I guess I never looked up the actor. I knew Mufasa, I knew Simba, I knew these certain actors, but I never realized this guy talking was Scar. So I was listening to him, I'm like, damn, that is Scar. That's wild. And so you have Jeremy Irons, Zachary, Quinto. You also have Stanley Tucci, Demi Moore's in this movie as well. You have Penn Badgley, a young Penn Badgley, because this movie came out in 2011. So So you have young Penn Badgley before he became Joe Goldberg, right? Before he became this big name. I didn't know who he was, but when I saw him in this movie, I was like, that's freaking Joe Goldberg right there. And so in my mind, because he does lose his job in the movie, spoiler, I'm like, this is what turned him into the serial killer Joe that happens in the movie. Not really, but it's just fun to think about, obviously. And so the movie, again, good movie. I enjoyed it. It's not a world beater for me. Like, some people really love this movie. For me, I enjoy it because I like the internal conversations and conflict and thought process. But I'll give this like a 6.7 out of 10. Like, it's a decent film. I'm not amazed by it. You'll see some people gave us like fantastic reviews. Some people love this movie. For me, I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't say this is like I need to see this again. It was a good film. A lot of big actors, a lot of big names in this movie. Good plot. Talks about what happened in 2008, and if you want to understand kind of the intricacies and some of these companies and big businesses that basically crashed the market and screwed over millions of Americans, you can learn a little bit more about that. So that's my review. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Coffee and Comments.
Nothing to lose, I was starving from the start. Now the same cat driving Jaguars.